Let's gently explore the deep ocean, that vast realm beneath the sunlit waters where darkness becomes complete and the world takes on qualities that seem almost dreamlike. The deep sea begins where sunlight can no longer penetrate, typically around 200 meters below the surface, though the transition happens gradually as the light fades through deeper and deeper shades of blue until there is only blackness. This is a place of profound stillness, where the water remains cold and unchanging throughout the year, hovering just above freezing regardless of what season passes on the surface far above. The pressure in the deep ocean is immense, increasing steadily with every meter of descent. At these depths, the weight of all the water above presses down with a force that would crush most surface-dwelling creatures instantly, yet life has found ways to exist here, adapted over millions of years to conditions that seem impossible. Deep-sea animals have bodies that are specially designed to withstand this pressure, with soft, flexible tissues that compress without damage and internal fluids that match the pressure of the water around them. These creatures move slowly through their dark world, conserving energy in an environment where every calorie must be carefully managed. In the deep ocean, food is scarce and arrives unpredictably. Most nutrients come from above, drifting down through thousands of meters of water in a constant but sparse rain of organic matter. Dead plankton, waste from surface animals, and the occasional larger carcass sink slowly through the depths, providing sustenance for the creatures that wait below. This falling material is called marine snow, tiny particles that descend like flakes through the water column, and deep-sea animals have developed patient feeding strategies to make use of whatever arrives. Some creatures filter the water continuously, straining out these microscopic particles, while others wait motionless for hours or days, ready to seize any larger piece of food that drifts within reach. The darkness of the deep sea is not absolute in the way you might imagine. Many creatures here produce their own light through bioluminescence, a chemical reaction within their bodies that creates a soft glow without heat. This light appears in shades of blue and green, colors that travel farthest through water, and it serves many purposes in the lightless depths. Some fish use bioluminescent lures to attract prey, dangling glowing appendages in front of their mouths like a lantern in the dark. Others use light to communicate with potential mates, flashing patterns that can be recognized by members of their own species. Still others create sudden bursts of light to startle predators or illuminate prey for just a moment before striking. The anglerfish is one of the most well-known inhabitants of the deep sea, though it moves through its world with a slowness that matches the pace of everything around it. Female anglerfish carry a bioluminescent lure that extends from their heads, a fishing rod of sorts that glows softly in the darkness. Small creatures, drawn to this light, drift closer to investigate, and when they come near enough, the anglerfish opens its large mouth and creates a sudden suction that pulls the prey inside. The male anglerfish is much smaller than the female, and in some species, the male attaches himself permanently to the female's body, fusing with her tissues and living as a parasite that provides sperm when needed. This unusual arrangement solves the problem of finding a mate in the vast, dark ocean where encounters between individuals are rare. Gulper eels drift through the deep water with mouths that seem impossibly large for their slender bodies. These creatures can open their jaws wide enough to swallow prey larger than themselves, their stomachs expanding to accommodate meals that may not come again for weeks. Their bodies are dark and streamlined, built for slow, efficient movement through the cold water. They have tiny eyes, of little use in the darkness, and rely instead on other senses to detect the subtle movements of prey or the chemical traces left by other animals drifting through the depths. Many deep-sea fish have eyes that are proportionally enormous, adapted to gather every available photon of light. In the deepest zones, where no sunlight reaches, these eyes detect only the faint glow of bioluminescence, watching for the telltale flicker that might indicate prey or the presence of another creature. Some species have tubular eyes that point straight upward, scanning the water above for silhouettes against the slightly less dark water higher in the column. These fish remain nearly motionless, drifting or resting on the seafloor, their upward gaze patient and unceasing. The sea floor at great depths is covered in fine sediment that has accumulated over millions of years. This ooze is soft and muddy, composed of the remains of countless microscopic organisms whose shells and skeletons have drifted down from the waters above. In some places, the sediment is several meters thick, a deep cushion of biological debris that records the history of life in the ocean. Creatures that live on or in this sediment move slowly across its surface or burrow into it, leaving trails and marks that are the only signs of activity in this still environment. Sea cucumbers crawl across the deep ocean floor, their soft cylindrical bodies contracting and relaxing as they move. They feed on the sediment itself, processing it through their digestive systems to extract any organic matter, then depositing the cleaned sediment behind them. This slow feeding creates small mounds and patterns on the seafloor, visible evidence of life in a place that otherwise appears barren. Sea cucumbers are patient animals, taking their time to travel across the bottom, and they can survive for long periods without food, their metabolism so slow that they require very little energy to maintain. Giant isopods inhabit the deep seafloor, crustaceans that resemble oversized versions of the pill bugs you might find in a garden, though these can grow to the size of a football. They scavenge whatever food they can find, feeding on the carcasses of larger animals that sink to the bottom. When food is abundant, they eat as much as possible, storing energy in their bodies for the long periods of scarcity that follow. They move slowly across the sediment on their many legs, exploring the darkness with their antennae, and they can survive for months or even years between meals, their bodies simply waiting in a state of low activity until the next feeding opportunity arrives. Spider crabs with impossibly long, thin legs walk delicately across the seafloor, their movements slow and careful. These creatures have bodies that seem too small for their lengthy limbs, but this design allows them to distribute their weight across a large area, preventing them from sinking into the soft sediment. They feed on small organisms and organic matter, picking through the ooze with their claws, and they move with a patient deliberateness that matches the pace of their environment. Deep-sea corals grow in the darkness, surprising examples of reef-building life in places where you might not expect to find it. Unlike their shallow-water relatives, these corals do not depend on sunlight or the algae that need it. Instead, they filter food directly from the water, extending their polyps to catch passing particles and small organisms. These corals grow extraordinarily slowly, adding tiny amounts to their structures each year, and some colonies are hundreds or even thousands of years old. They create habitat for other deep-sea creatures, providing structure in an otherwise flat landscape of sediment. Hydrothermal vents are places where the seafloor itself appears to come alive, where superheated water rich in minerals erupts from cracks in the Earth's crust. The water emerging from these vents can reach temperatures of several hundred degrees, hot enough to melt lead, yet just a few meters away the surrounding water remains near freezing. These vents create oases of life in the deep ocean, supporting communities of organisms unlike any found elsewhere. The heat and chemicals from the vents provide energy that specialized bacteria can use, forming the base of a food web that doesn't depend on sunlight at all. Giant tube worms cluster around hydrothermal vents, their white tubes rising from the seafloor like strange gardens. These creatures have no mouth and no digestive system in the traditional sense. Instead, they harbor bacteria inside their bodies, bacteria that convert the chemicals from the vent into usable energy through a process called chemosynthesis. The tube worms provide the bacteria with a safe environment and access to the vent chemicals, and in return, the bacteria produce nutrients that sustain the worms. This partnership allows life to thrive in conditions that seem hostile, creating vibrant communities in the lightless depths. Vent crabs and shrimp swarm around these thermal oases, feeding on the bacteria that grow on the rocks and on each other. These animals are often pale or colorless, having lost the pigmentation that would serve no purpose in the darkness. They move quickly compared to other deep-sea creatures, energized by the abundance of food around the vents, though their movements still seem slow compared to animals in sunlit waters. The warm water from the vents creates plumes that rise and mix with the surrounding cold water, and these gradients provide different microhabitats where various species can find their preferred conditions. The mid-ocean ridges are underwater mountain ranges that stretch across the seafloor, created by tectonic plates pulling apart and new crust forming in the gap. These ridges run like seams through the deep ocean, rising several thousand meters above the surrounding plains, and they are the sites of most hydrothermal vent activity. The ridges are young in geological terms, with fresh volcanic rock and active spreading that slowly pushes the seafloor outward. Earthquakes are common along these ridges, though they pass unnoticed except by sensitive instruments, the ground shifting slowly beneath the cold water. Deep-sea jellyfish drift through the water column, their translucent bodies nearly invisible even when they produce their own soft light. Some species have tentacles that extend for many meters, trailing behind them like delicate fishing lines that capture any small creature unfortunate enough to brush against them. These jellyfish pulse slowly through the water, their movements gentle and rhythmic, and they can suspend themselves at any depth, adjusting their buoyancy to remain in places where food is most likely to pass by. Their simple nervous systems require little energy, and they can survive for long periods without feeding, their bodies composed mostly of water with very little solid tissue. Vampire squid inhabit the deep waters of the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones, despite their dramatic name living quite peacefully in the darkness. They are small creatures, typically no longer than a human hand, with a dark reddish-brown coloration and large blue eyes. When threatened, they can invert their webbed arms over their bodies, creating a defensive posture that displays bioluminescent photophores, but most of their time is spent drifting quietly through the water. Vampire squid feed on marine snow, collecting falling particles with sticky filaments that they produce and then drawing these filaments through their arms to extract the food. This feeding strategy allows them to survive in deeper, darker waters than most squids, which typically hunt more active prey. The midnight zone, or bathypelagic zone, extends from about 1,000 meters to 4,000 meters below the surface, a vast realm where no sunlight penetrates and the temperature remains constant. Animals in this zone are adapted to complete darkness, and many have reduced or absent eyes, relying instead on other sensory organs to detect vibrations, chemical signals, and electrical fields. The water here is under tremendous pressure, yet it flows with slow, steady currents that circulate water throughout the deep ocean over periods of hundreds or thousands of years. Viperfish patrol the midnight zone with long, needle-like teeth that protrude even when their mouths are closed. These teeth are designed to impale prey and prevent escape, and the viperfish's jaw can unhinge to swallow creatures nearly as large as itself. Despite their fearsome appearance, viperfish are not aggressive hunters charging through the water but rather patient ambush predators that use a bioluminescent lure to attract prey close enough to strike. They spend long periods hovering motionless in the water, their metabolism slow, waiting for the right moment to feed. Barrel-eye fish have transparent heads that allow them to look upward through their own skulls, their eyes rotating to track the silhouettes of potential prey against the faint light from above. This unusual adaptation gives them a wider field of vision than would be possible with fixed eyes, and their heads are filled with clear fluid that protects the delicate eye structures while allowing light to pass through. These fish drift slowly through the water, their bodies small and fragile-looking, watching the darkness above for any sign of movement. The hadal zone represents the deepest parts of the ocean, found in trenches that plunge more than 6,000 meters below the surface. These trenches are formed where one tectonic plate slides beneath another, creating deep, narrow valleys in the seafloor. The Mariana Trench is the deepest known point in the ocean, reaching nearly 11,000 meters, a depth where the pressure is more than 1,000 times that at the surface. Yet even here, life exists, adapted to conditions that push the boundaries of what seems possible. Snailfish have been found living at depths greater than 8,000 meters, small translucent creatures with soft, gelatinous bodies that can withstand the crushing pressure. They swim slowly through the water, feeding on small crustaceans and other invertebrates, and they appear delicate despite living in one of Earth's most extreme environments. Their bodies contain special proteins that help maintain cellular function under high pressure, and their bones are thin and flexible rather than rigid. These fish represent the current depth record for vertebrate life, though it's possible that other creatures live even deeper, waiting to be discovered. Amphipods, small shrimp-like crustaceans, are abundant in the hadal zone, scavenging on whatever organic matter reaches these extreme depths. Some amphipods in the trenches grow larger than their shallow water relatives, a phenomenon called deep-sea gigantism that appears in several groups of animals. These amphipods swarm over any food that arrives, consuming it quickly in a feeding frenzy that stands in stark contrast to the usual slow pace of deep-sea life. They can detect chemical signals from food sources from considerable distances, allowing them to locate rare feeding opportunities in the vast darkness. The deep ocean floor in the abyssal plains is remarkably flat, stretching for hundreds of kilometers with very little variation in depth. These plains are among the flattest places on Earth, their surfaces covered in fine sediment that has settled evenly over time. Occasionally, this flatness is interrupted by seamounts, underwater mountains that rise from the seafloor but don't reach the surface. These seamounts create areas of different current patterns and can serve as gathering places for deep-sea life, providing rocky surfaces in an otherwise sediment-covered world. Xenophyrophores are single-celled organisms that grow to surprising sizes in the deep sea, sometimes reaching several centimeters across. These creatures are among the largest single cells known, and they construct delicate tests or shells from sediment particles, creating intricate structures on the seafloor. They are fragile and rarely survive collection, so much about their biology remains mysterious, but they appear to be abundant in the deep ocean and may play important roles in sediment processing and nutrient cycling. Dumbo octopuses propel themselves through deep water by flapping ear-like fins on the sides of their heads, giving them their nickname from their resemblance to the cartoon elephant. They are small octopuses, typically less than a foot long, and they hover above the seafloor searching for small worms and crustaceans. Their movements are gentle and graceful, and they can change direction quickly despite their slow pace. These octopuses live deeper than any other octopus species, found at depths of 3,000 to 4,000 meters, where they glide through the darkness like small ghosts. Deep-sea sponges grow on hard surfaces, filtering water through their bodies to extract microscopic particles of food. Some of these sponges can live for thousands of years, growing so slowly that their age is measured using radiocarbon dating of their skeletal elements. They create intricate glass-like structures made of silica, with beautiful geometric patterns that provide strength while allowing water to flow through. These ancient organisms have witnessed centuries of changes in the ocean, persisting quietly in the darkness while the world above transforms. The deep ocean contains features called cold seeps, places where hydrocarbon-rich fluids seep slowly from the seafloor. Like hydrothermal vents, these seeps support unique communities of life based on chemosynthetic bacteria, though the chemistry is different and the temperature remains cold. Mussels and clams colonize these seeps, harboring bacteria in their tissues and growing in dense clusters. These seep communities can persist for decades or centuries as long as the fluid flow continues, creating islands of relative abundance in the nutrient-poor deep sea. Hagfish burrow into the sediment or scavenge on the seafloor, primitive jawless fish that have changed little over hundreds of millions of years. They have a remarkable defense mechanism, producing enormous amounts of slime when threatened, a substance that can clog the gills of predators and allow the hagfish to escape. They feed primarily on dead and dying animals, using their tooth-like structures to rasp flesh from carcasses. Hagfish can tie themselves in knots, using this behavior to gain leverage when feeding or to escape from tight spaces, and they move slowly across the bottom with eel-like undulations. The deep ocean is three-dimensional in ways that surface environments are not, with creatures occupying every level of the water column from just below the sunlit zone to the seafloor thousands of meters down. Animals can maintain their position at specific depths by adjusting their buoyancy, using gas-filled swim bladders or lipid deposits that are less dense than water. This allows fish and other creatures to hover at the depth where they are most likely to encounter food or find the temperatures and pressures they prefer, without having to swim constantly to maintain their position. Many deep-sea creatures undergo vertical migration, rising toward the surface at night to feed in more productive waters, then descending back to the depths during the day. This migration is one of the largest movements of biomass on Earth, though it happens slowly and quietly in the darkness. Small fish, squid, and crustaceans make this journey daily, traveling hundreds of meters up and down through the water column. This behavior helps to transport nutrients from the surface to the deep ocean, connecting these two realms in ways that affect the entire marine ecosystem. The concept of marine snow includes not just small particles but also larger aggregates that form when particles stick together. These larger pieces sink faster than individual particles, creating a more efficient transport of organic matter to the deep ocean. Some animals specialize in feeding on these larger aggregates, positioning themselves at depths where the aggregates are most concentrated. The size and composition of marine snow varies with the seasons and with the productivity of the surface waters, creating fluctuations in food availability that ripple down through the deep-sea food web. Deep-sea fish often have large livers filled with oil, which helps them maintain neutral buoyancy and serves as an energy reserve during long periods without food. These oils are less dense than water and allow the fish to float without expending energy, though they must still swim to maneuver and hunt. The composition of these oils varies among species, with different fishes using different compounds to achieve the same result of staying suspended in the water column. Some deep-sea creatures have bodies that are almost entirely water, with very little protein or hard tissue. This adaptation reduces their metabolic needs and makes them neutrally buoyant, allowing them to drift with minimal effort. These gelatinous animals include various jellies, salps, and siphonophores, creatures whose bodies are so fragile that they are often damaged or destroyed when brought to the surface by nets or submersibles. Their delicate construction is perfectly suited to the gentle environment of the deep sea, where water supports them completely and movement can be slow and effortless. The deep ocean is home to bacteria that play crucial roles in cycling nutrients and breaking down organic matter. These microorganisms are adapted to cold temperatures and high pressure, and they work slowly to decompose the material that reaches the deep seafloor. Without these bacteria, organic matter would accumulate and nutrients would become locked away, unavailable to other forms of life. The bacteria themselves serve as food for slightly larger organisms, creating the first steps in food chains that eventually support the larger, more visible creatures of the deep. Certain deep-sea fish have lost their scales entirely, their skin bare and sometimes transparent. This adaptation may reduce drag as they move slowly through the water, or it may simply represent the loss of features that no longer serve a purpose in an environment where armor and protection from sunlight are unnecessary. These scaleless fish often appear delicate, their bodies soft and yielding, yet they are perfectly adapted to their environment and no more fragile than they need to be. The bioluminescence in the deep sea comes in different forms and serves different purposes. Some fish have photophores, specialized light-producing organs that can be controlled to create flashes or steady glows. Others harbor bioluminescent bacteria in pouches or organs, maintaining colonies of these microorganisms and using their light for the fish's own purposes. Still others have bioluminescent tissues that glow continuously, providing ambient light around the animal. The variety of light-producing mechanisms shows how many times bioluminescence has evolved independently in different groups of deep-sea animals. Counterillumination is a strategy used by some midwater fish and squid to camouflage themselves from predators below. These animals produce light on their undersides that matches the faint downwelling light from above, erasing their silhouette when viewed from below. The intensity of this light must be adjusted constantly as the animal changes depth or as the surface light changes with time of day, requiring sophisticated control systems that measure ambient light and adjust the bioluminescence accordingly. Deep-sea squid glide through the water with their arms trailing behind them, their bodies streamlined for slow, efficient movement. Many species have photophores on their bodies, creating patterns of light that may serve for species recognition or camouflage. Some deep-sea squid are quite large, with arms spanning several meters, while others are small and delicate. They feed on fish and crustaceans, using their tentacles to capture prey and their sharp beaks to process it. Squid move by jet propulsion, drawing water into their mantle cavity and expelling it forcefully, though in the deep sea these movements are gentle and measured rather than the rapid escape jets used by shallow water species. The deep ocean supports a surprising diversity of life despite the challenges of darkness, cold, and pressure. Each species has found its own niche, its own way of obtaining food and reproducing in an environment that offers very little. This diversity exists at all scales, from bacteria to large fish, from the mobile to the sessile, from predators to scavengers to filter feeders. The deep sea demonstrates that life is remarkably adaptable, able to colonize even the most seemingly inhospitable environments. The study of the deep ocean continues to reveal new species and new behaviors, with each expedition bringing back images and specimens that expand our understanding. Much of the deep sea remains unexplored, vast areas that no human eye has ever seen even through a camera lens. The technologies needed to reach these depths and withstand the pressure are sophisticated and expensive, and each visit to the deep ocean floor represents a major undertaking. Yet slowly, gradually, the picture of life in the deep sea becomes clearer, one observation at a time. The deep ocean moves to rhythms that are almost imperceptible on human timescales. Currents flow slowly, animals grow slowly, and changes happen over decades or centuries rather than days or weeks. This slow pace creates a stable environment in some ways, a place where conditions remain constant and predictable. Yet it also means that disturbances can have long-lasting effects, as recovery happens at the same slow pace as everything else in the deep sea. The quietness of the deep ocean is not complete silence, but rather an absence of the rapid changes and intense activity found in surface waters. Here, patience is not just a virtue but a necessity, a fundamental requirement for survival. Food is waited for, mates are waited for, and life proceeds at a pace that allows for the conservation of energy in an environment where every calorie must be carefully managed. This creates a sense of timelessness, a feeling that the deep ocean exists outside the usual flow of days and seasons, operating according to its own ancient and unchanging principles. Human activity has begun to reach even into the deep ocean, with fishing nets scraping the seafloor and plastic debris sinking to the deepest trenches. Yet the deep sea remains largely pristine compared to surface waters, a refuge where conditions remain close to natural. The darkness continues, the cold persists, and the pressure remains constant, creating a world that exists parallel to our own but almost entirely separate, a realm of slow time and patient life that carries on in the depths beneath the waves.